A quick note before we begin. Today's episode is about finding hope, but does include the discussion of suicide. Please take care while listening.
It was 2013, and Lieutenant Colonel J.C. Glick was driving home with his wife and daughter. The family had recently moved to Columbia, South Carolina as part of J.C.'s transition from deployment, and were getting used to their new home. Initially, J.C. was excited for this next chapter of his life.
I had spent the previous decade going back and forth to Iraq and Afghanistan, with the best people you could ever imagine, doing incredible things. And I said, I'll command anything.
But his new life was proving to be very, very difficult.
And overnight, I lost my identity, right? I was a ranger. I was a special operations guy. Now what am I? I lost my purpose and I lost my community, right? The guys that I had worked with were not coming from my community at the time. And I was lost. I was completely lost.
This sudden change altered his demeanor.
I was angry all the time. And that anger was manifesting it in the way that I wasn't treating people around me very well. I was angry all the time.
As he pulled into their driveway, JC casually mentioned something to his wife.
I was talking to my wife in the car about something stupid. I don't even remember what I was talking about. And my daughter, she said something and she didn't really even interrupt. I think she even said, "Excuse me." But it set me off. I lost it and started screaming at her for interrupting. And I looked at her and she was so scared. And in my head, I was saying, "Stop doing this. Like, stop it. You're scaring them." And I couldn't stop.
JC ran out of the vehicle, ashamed of his actions. He was in a very dark place and couldn't believe who he had become. But now, over a decade later, JC is in a much better place.
I think when you can be in the place where I was so many times, you don't ever think that person's going to get out of that hole. And what I can tell you is every day I am happier than I was yesterday. And I am the happiest I've ever been in my entire life right now. And I am thankful for that.
J.C. Glick went from being near homeless to a decorated Army Ranger over the span of a 20-plus year career that included 11 deployments. But his transition away from the field and then retirement had an unexpectedly difficult effect on him and led to multiple attempts at self-harm. But today he's thriving as a published author and serves as a consultant to business leaders and top athletes. More importantly, he's taking the lessons he's learned through his own experience and helping others as the CEO of the Commit Foundation. In today's episode, our hosts sit down with JC to find out exactly how he was able to overcome the dark period in his life, what the Commit Foundation is doing to help others, and what he thinks about a Navy SEAL joining his family. I'm Carrie Varro-Heikes, and this is Army Matters.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lieutenant General Retired Leslie C. Smith, and welcome to Army Matters. I'm here today with my good buddy, Go ahead.
I thought you were pausing.
No, go ahead. Go do your thing.
I thought you paused.
Go ahead. It's
right.
Okay. Go.
Sergeant of the Army retired Dan Dailey.
Dan?
Yes?
How are you today?
I am good today.
You sound pretty giddy.
Yeah.
Why are you giddy today, man?
I don't know. I'm just in a good mood,
Yeah. Okay. Good. you and I probably had a first bonding experience about fitness. Where did we first meet about fitness, brother? You remember?
Yes.
What was it? Our favorite location.
The Pentagon Athletic Center, the PAC.
The PAC. Yeah. The place where you used to have to pay for, but then they figured out that you didn't have to pay. And then
well, enlisted guys, we never had to pay. The rich officers used to have to pay.
Anyway, rich, relatively speaking. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So, Dan, when it came to physical fitness tests, what did you excel in at the most?
Ooh, my favorite event, the run.
The run.
The run.
Why was the run so important?
As a young kid, I was always a very good runner, and I don't think there's such thing as a gifted runner. You got to do a lot of hard work, but I enjoyed it, and it was every day that I went out and ran, it was my release. It was my time to think. It was, and then once you become at peace with that activity, you get better at it. I realized that psychologically. It wasn't a burden. It's something I longed for every morning, get up and go for a run, right?
Yeah, and you did a lot of it too. What was the most challenging part of the Army fitness test?
I would say.
And the new fitness test, what was the most challenging?
Oh, initially it was the ball throw.
Why the ball throw, man?
It's about technique, and I'm a little guy, right?
Yeah,
so the ball is the same size regardless of your size. Right? And when you're little, one size doesn't fit all the time. Yeah, big guys could throw that thing. I had to get more technique down, right? Because I didn't have the body weight to put behind that thing. So I struggled with it. I was okay with deadlift, and I was okay with the drag, and I was okay with the run, the sprints, and the run, obviously. And even the original one, the knee tuck, which is not on there now. I was good at that because I did pull-ups every day. But the ball, I was not good at. What about you? No, let's go back to the 3 event.
Yeah. What did I excel at the most?
Yeah.
When I was a young guy, I used to love to run until my knees and ankles started having fun. Then after that, probably the push-ups.
Yeah.
Was
now, what about the ACFT when we started that?
I loved the ball toss because I had the leverage to do it. It was just learning how to meter yourself, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that is tough. I mean, because not everybody's built the same.
That's right. Yeah, like you like a lean, mean fighting machine, and I'm just like a big guy.
Dozer.
Oh, is that what I am? A dozer?
You're a dozer. But we need dozers.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. You definitely want them when you gotta go through the door.
You know why infantry guys stay thin and skinny?
Yeah, so they can get through places.
So you can hide behind street signs.
Exactly. Now, Dan, the reason why we're talking about fitness tests, because right here in the studio today, we have someone who used to run the Army's physical fitness school down there at Fort Jackson, South Carolina.
Yeah?
Yeah, he's a ranger, and he's the CEO of the Commit Foundation.
Why don't we bring him on the show?
Lieutenant Colonel J.C. Glick, welcome to Army Matters, brother.
Thank you. It's great to be here, and I enjoyed that conversation y'all had about the PT tests. That's a good start.
That's great.
Oh, we're gonna dig into it, JC.
Oh, don't worry, we are.
Yeah.
Good.
So you were in charge of the Army's physical fitness school. Can you tell us some of those suggestions that you made about the fitness standards?
So at the time I was, then it was called Victory College. Now I think it's called Victory Brigade. So I had the resiliency school, the leadership school, and the fitness school.
Yeah. For our listeners, tell us what's Victory Brigade? Where is that? Where's it located?
Fort Jackson,
South Carolina. So you were in charge of the fitness. It's almost like the fitness brigade. What was going on there? What did you have to do?
Quite honestly, we had tremendous people leading the fitness school. So I just had to provide guidance on, we were given this mandate to create a new PT test. And so it was really just about, encouraging them to think differently, to look at, go see what CrossFit is doing, go see what Thor is doing, go see what all these other organizations are doing, go visit teams, go see what they're doing.
Okay.
Let's become the lead organization in fitness.
Now, JC, tell us some of the suggestions you made.
When I was able to get there, I said, look, it's not about PT, it's about being athletes. We're professional soldiers. We should train like professional athletes. And it's funny, I've never been asked to run in combat more than a sprint. I've had to move with weight on, I've had to lift my own body weight, et cetera. So the guidance I gave was, I want you to look at the tasks that we have to do and design exercises that will test those things. And more importantly, people will train, because you'll train what you test. So they'll practice it and they will be better and more lethal at what they're doing. So that's what we focused on.
That's great.
My recommendation, which was destroyed so quickly, was that there was no set standard. What I believed is, if you want a fitness culture, you don't set a standard, because then you have a standards culture, right? So once I can pass a standard, I don't need to practice anymore. I don't need to do it anymore. Yeah. But if you said, hey, your final PT score, every time you take it, you have to improve. It must get better every single time. And when it stops or it plateaus, we're going to look at your training. We're going to look at your diet. We're going to look at your injuries. And I got that from Greg Birch.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, I know Greg. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because I asked Greg Birch when we first started the RPAT, he wouldn't tell anybody what the standard was. Like, what's the standard? What's the standard? And he's like, just do as well as you can. And we started, and I think guys were finishing it in 30 minutes. By the time I left the regiment, guys were finishing in 15 to 12 minutes. And when we got to AWG, I said, so what was the standard? He goes, there wasn't one. I just wanted everybody to do as well as they could. And I knew that they were Rangers. They'd continue to try to get better.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I believed in that. I think that's kind of the mentality, but that did not go over very well, that there should not be a standard.
Yeah. Yeah.
So speaking of fitness and standards, you now consult with several professional sports teams. Can you tell us which ones?
Yeah, so I've worked with the Denver Broncos. I've worked with the Carolina Panthers. I've worked with the Washington Commanders. I've spoken to all the head coaches at the coaches conference and all the owners, and the Charlotte Hornets in the NBA. So those are the main teams that I've worked with.
Okay. Did you work out with any of them?
Yes.
What did they think?
They have very soft like mentality. So it was always about, beating me. And, the good news is I can bench press 225 like all day long. So, it was kind of fun to, I think they have respect for what we do. And I think, they understand the idea of being a tactical athlete. But every one of them was faster than me. I mean, you want to feel slow, go work out with NFL guys.
Yeah. So you're taking credit for what the Washington Commanders is doing right now?
So Dan Quinn is a good friend of mine.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
And Dan Quinn is, I'm going to tell you that Ron Rivera is the reason. He set the foundation that Dan Quinn then took over and continued to build upon. And they've got a great team there with, Jason Wright. I know he's on his way out, but Jason's one of the greatest guys you could ever know. But I love Ron Rivera. I would consider Ron Rivera one of my closest friends, and the foundation he built. And then, when Dan Quinn came in, he and Ron are very good friends, and Dan's just an awesome guy.
Yeah. So let's back up a little bit, Dan, learn a little bit more about you. What led you to enlisting in the Army? What was the moment you realized you loved the service?
When I graduated high school, I think I was 113 out of 120 people. I graduated like a very low C
two
average. Things
though, they all could have been very smart in front of you too, right? So
they weren't. Nowadays, I always say, if you have money, it's called a gap year. If you're poor, you can't get into college. So I couldn't get into college. I took 2 years off, and I was basically homeless for 2 years. I couch surfed a little bit. I did, initially I slept outside. I was kicked out of the house, and I then got the opportunity to go to the University of Rhode Island, and I don't think that you go from homeless to getting to go to university and graduating anywhere else other than the United States. And I felt I needed to give back. And I started actually in the Marine Corps PLC program. And then I was walking through the the Commons or whatever. And the ROTC desk was there. And I started talking to the colonel there. And he's like, hey, we'll send you to airborne school. And if you want to be a Ranger, well, you can do that. And I was like, oh. So I called the Marine guy who was like my point of contact. And I said, hey, the Army said they'll do this. What will you do? And they said, we'll let you be a Marine. And I was like, oh, well, I'm going to go with the Army then. And so, and the Army did everything that they said they were going to do. I ended up getting a 2-year scholarship. They sent me to airborne school. I got branch regular Army infantry. I mean, everything the Army said they would do for me, they did. And I felt it was the right thing to do.
Yeah. Those are the most plentiful options, though. Just making a point there, right? So if you say infantry, they're like, yes, another guy wants to come.
Yeah, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
I was infantry, so we can make fun of each other
Yes,
if you're
absolutely.
in the club. Right.
It's all good. We love the infantry.
Yeah, of course, you better.
Queen of battle. That's right. So JC, we've heard a story about you gave your soldiers a nap doing an eatery.
Yeah.
While I could agree with that, and I know it happens automatically, how did that lead to a valuable lesson?
Yeah. So we were, we would do these things in 3rd Ranger Battalion called Snap Links. So it was, we were the 9-hour company. We launched, so how difficult that is all day long. You're prepping, you're getting everything going. You're going from alert, which is like 4 o'clock in the morning. And then 9 hours later, you're on a helicopter, and then you get dropped somewhere in the middle of the Chattahoochee woods with wait a minute vines. And we were moving like pond water. And it got so bad that we said, all right, well, let's go out to the road and move from the road. And we weren't moving any better. And the guys were smoked. And I just said, hey, go to a 3rd security and everybody go down. And we slept for 45 minutes. And we got up, and I'll tell you what, they moved like, they were just moving. We got to our ORP hours before anybody had even hit their first checkpoint. And what I didn't know is that the RCO, which was McChrystal at the time, was behind me. And he was my evaluator. And he came up to me, and back in the 90s, you got fired from the regiment pretty darn quick. And so he came up and he goes, whose idea was it to go to a 3rd security and make everybody sleep on the side of on the route here? And I said, that was mine, sir. He's like, that was a pretty good choice. And then he walked away because I was ready. I was like, oh, I'm getting fired right now. This is like the shortest stint in regimental history. What it taught me is that we have these ideas, and these soft dudes who are like, oh yeah, you got to get up at 4:30 in the morning and, go get your PT in and attack the day and be a level 7 berserker.
Yeah, let's all fight the enemy tired.
Yeah.
That's smart.
And what I realized was, you got to take a break if you're going to be combat effective. And that stayed with me. And I think that's the difference between somebody who does like a combat deployment or 11 combat deployments. You've got to be thoughtful, and, you got to preserve the force, and, it matters.
That's good. So JC, a leader once told a group of soldiers that you were with, you're not the best, you're the best available. Why do you think that was so effective?
Not for the reasons that most people would think that, right? I think it was effective because when you're not the best, you have the ability to innovate and try. If you're the best, there's no room for innovation. There's no room for improvement. And greatness isn't static.
Okay.
If we take the 1972 Dolphins and we put them in a time capsule and we brought them to 2025, how do they do? They're going to get killed by SMU. So when you're not the best and you're only the best available, that means somebody out there is better than you. And you got to figure out, how do I improve? Mm-hmm. It was the most powerful thing I've ever heard. That was Stan McChrystal who said it. It changed how we fought.
So JC, how does that correlate to how you deal with NFL teams? Because that's almost similar to what things they got to deal with too.
Yeah, we talk about that with coaches all the time, and we tell them, you got to talk to your guys that you're the person that was lucky enough to get drafted. You got to earn your right to be here every single day, and you earn your right to be here by making the people on your right and left better. And we worked with a player, who I asked him, I said, how often do you have to be great? And he goes, 100% of the time. And I'm like, that sounds exhausting. And we did the math, and, we looked at it, and it was basically when he had a key block or when he was carrying the ball. And it turned out he needed to be great 2% of the time. That means 98% of the time you get to be trying new stuff. You get to be learning, through either failure or success. And that's such a powerful lesson for all of us, because I bet you go ask any kid on a sports field or even in school, hey, how often do you have to be great? He's going to think, I have to be great all the time. I got to be great in practice. Why do they call it practice then? Man, if you're not trying new stuff, then why are you at practice?
Did you know that as a member of AUSA, you have access to many benefits? From car rental to entertainment discounts, the opportunities are ample. Visit us online at ausa.org/benefits to learn more.
Welcome back to Army Matters. Now, JC, at the beginning of the episode, we heard you talk about how it was tough to transition from active duty, from deployments, and then to retirement. What helped you get past that really dark period?
There was a time I was on like 24 different meds. I found the right psych who was willing to try different things. I got a service dog, which I had for 5 years and really, really helped. He's retired now, and now is just a lazy bum in his declining years. My first marriage dissolved, and I'm going to take full accountability for that. That was on me, 100%, because of a lack of knowing who I was and what I wanted. And but I found my person who's changed my life, and I realized that looking at this as a mental illness as opposed to a physiological issue, right? If you tear your ACL, you get it fixed. But when we have mental illness, it's spooky. And I think once I realized that this is a physiological issue, this is a brain chemistry issue that you can actually overcome, and you can, just like you go to, rehab for your knee, you go to rehab for your brain. It got me on the right path to figuring it out. And what I realized, the goal is not to be always happy. The goal is to be joyful, and you'll have times of happiness and times of sadness, and, not avoid your triggers, but figure out how to get through your triggers, and talking about it, and being vulnerable, and saying like, yeah, like I struggled with this. And, it's funny. I told one senior leader, I said, he's like, hey, I heard you had 4 attempts. I was listening to something you said. I said, yeah. He was like, man, you didn't fail that many times when you were working for me. And I was like, yeah, well, every once in a while, it's good to fail at something. I think sometimes we have to get to that place. And now I always say I'm on the right side of despair, right? I mean, I can look back. I can't imagine getting to that place again. But I do know what that place feels like. And, you got to learn to just move forward and glib. But you got to have a support system. You got to, you got to be involved in your own health and your own mental health.
What role did your current wife play in your health and your recovery?
Unconditional support and an ability to call me on my nonsense. I think that unconditional love doesn't mean unconditional agreement. And I think that she's really good at saying, I think you're thinking about this the wrong way. Let's talk about it. And calling me out, like when I get to a zone and she's like, hey, what is this? This isn't your best self. And that's enough to go, oh, yeah, okay. And I'm going to tell you, look, my ex-wife is an incredible human being. She's a wonderful mother. She's a good human. And she was a great Army wife. But what I have now is truly a partnership, right? I have a teammate who, I think we try to stay on the 50-yard line with each other. Sometimes she's going to come back to my 20. Sometimes I got to go to her 20. But our goal is, hey, we're on the 50-yard line together. And I like, that's huge.
Yeah. What do you think our Army can do to help our vets who transition?
That's a great question. I actually have an answer for that. So the Army at a minimum spends $55,000 to transform a civilian into a soldier. You know how much they spend to transform that same soldier into civilian?
I don't know the figure, but it's not $55,000. I know that.
It's less than $1,000. At most, it's $800, but mostly it's $250.
Yeah.
And what we have to realize is the trauma that you go through when you lose your identity, purpose, and community overnight. I mean, again, you're not a soldier anymore. You're not there to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. And we rip your community away, right? I mean, like, you're not on the team anymore. Transition is a state, right? So, if I have a can of soda, right? When it goes from full to empty, that's a transition. It went from full to empty. But if I take that same can and I turn it into a Tesla, that's a transformation. We have to at least spend half as much. And I literally think it can be done for half as much. I think it can be done for $15,000 a person. Transforming back to what's your new identity, what's your new purpose, what's important to you, and let's help you find a community.
So, JC, correct me if I'm wrong, but helping with transformation is what you're doing as the CEO of the Commit Foundation. How did you ever end up there?
You know, it was funny. A year ago, I was with my wife and I was saying, my life is freaking amazing. Like, I am happier than I've ever been before, but there's like this 10% hole, honey. And we were talking about it. And I had a friend who, she called up and she said, hey, I'm going to be a mentor for the Commit Foundation. I'd never even heard of the Commit Foundation. She's like, I'm going to be a mentor. Do you want to come do it? It's in New York. And I said, sure. Why not? I came home from being a mentor and I told my wife, I just found my 10%. I don't know what I'm going to do with this organization, but this is what I was missing. Then it turned out that they needed a CEO. I applied. It's funny, the search firm actually cut me in the first round. And I wrote a note to the chairman and said, hey, I appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity. Good luck. And if you need anything, I'm still in. He called me. We had a talk over the weekend. He asked me to come back in. A guy named Guy Filippelli, famous West Pointer. Guy said, I want you to come back in. I was like, no, I'm not coming back in. You already said no. And he's like, we didn't say no. And so I talked to my wife, who initially was against it. I said, look, we'll keep going. And, I fell in love with the organization all over again. And since March, I will tell you, this is the best role I've ever had other than command. Command was the greatest time of my life. This is equal to that.
JC, can you tell us more about the work that you do with the Commit Foundation and what it does to help transform our veterans?
I think what we do is really special. And again, it's proven by research, it's proven by science, and 95% of the fellows are satisfied with their lives. Compare that to the rest of the civilian world, it's at 73%, right? 92% of our fellows are satisfied with their careers. The rest of the country is at 62%. This is the kicker. 78% of our fellows, because we insist that they must do service to others. Like, we're going to invest in them, but they must find a service project, right? It doesn't have to be veteran. It can be Habitat for Humanity, whatever it is. Hey, volunteer on to coach your kid's team. 78% of our fellows volunteer. 23% of the United States population volunteers in their community. We have these incredible folks, like these absolute studs, and they're at the peak. And then we push them out and say, oh, you're going to do great. And they're completely lost. Why would we not set those people up for success so they can be the leaders of our country for the next 40 or 50 years? And let's get them on the right path. I think we're wasting this portion of the population that can just do so darn much for us.
So you're working on a PhD in Columbia.
Yeah, my doctorate at Columbia.
Not in Columbia, Les. That's a foreign country. At Columbia.
Yes, at the university.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
You see how JC, you see how I got to keep this thing
He
straight
knows
here?
what I was talking about.
Yeah.
Ignore
But our listeners
the guy.
would have thought JC was in Columbia right now.
No, they would not have. No, they would not have.
That down there with the coffee business.
coffee,
See how it fits together?
Anyway,
It fits
go
together.
Ahead, go ahead, JC.
Oh, gosh.
At Columbia University.
Yeah. So
Yes.
look, I love Columbia.
First off, what's the focus? What's your focus for your doctorate?
So the doctorate is in leadership and adult learning.
Okay.
And my focus right now, my proposal is how do high potential, high performance veterans go through identity and purpose reconstruction after service. And so what we've used for many years is the military transition theory. But there's this thing called transformational learning that a guy named Jack Mesereau came up with. And it has to be, that's been critiqued for being too individual. And I think that if you take something that's very systemic and you take something that's very individualized and you put those things together, you have a really good program that can help people truly not just transition, but transform. I'm excited about what I'm studying because I think you should only research if it's going to help people. Like research for research's sake is what academics do. I'm not an academic. No one will ever accuse me of being an academic. I want to study this because I really think it's going to help folks.
I agree. So which title will you be most proudest of? The doctorate or lieutenant colonel?
Oh, that's a good question. Actually, honestly, the most proud is if my wife thinks I'm a good partner and my kids think I'm a good dad. That's all I care about because the titles go. So I know it's all feels and touchy, right?
Yeah.
But no, it's
JC, though, I got to tell you something. My son already I have the #1 dad trophy on my desk.
Do you?
At home.
You're already there?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
Is it regional though? Is it regional or is it?
No,
you can have your own. You can have your own title.
Oh, you can? Anybody?
We'll give you.
I'm not the.
You're the #1 dad in your family.
Oh.
You're not the father.
I got to call my son. He told me
it counts. Hey, JC, that's good, man. That's #1. Yeah.
So we'll end it with this. We know there's got to be another person in your family that may be a Navy SEAL, is what I'm told, right?
What?
Yeah. What? No. I always call them the Hollywood Special Forces guys. Good guys. I've worked with them in combat. I love them. But, they're a little too Hollywood for me. I'm just that Army guy. All right. I'm probably going to get beat down and death threats now for saying this.
Yeah, you are.
But if you and he got into a boxing ring, who would win?
Oh my gosh, that's not even close. I probably got 60 pounds on the guy. He could probably outrun me though. Like he'll get away from me faster.
Yeah.
I will tell you that people ask me, "Are you surprised that she found? She was in San Diego. Are you surprised she found a SEAL?" No, I'm not at all. She grew up around Rangers and soft guys, and I'll tell you what. And I tell her this. There's days I love him more than her. So.
That your daughter can get a copy of this podcast.
I want her to. I want her to hear it.
So you're saying there's some bro love going on?
Yeah.
Look,
is that what it is?
That's good, though. That's good.
Yeah,
there's nobody better there's nobody I'd want to be a partner to my daughter than him. I think he's got his head on straight. I think she's got her head on straight. Their priorities are straight. They waited a long time to get married. Yeah. I love him to death. He just did his first deployment. Really proud of him. Mm-hmm. We talked through different stuff. I only worked with one SEAL team. It wasn't his. They have a very different mission set than what I'm used to. But God bless him. I couldn't be happier for both of them. I think they're both getting really good partners. Yeah, and that's good. If I can convince her to not have a wedding and just take the money and run, that'd be great.
Yeah. Well, that's because you don't want to pay for the wedding, or because
I have 2 daughters, JC. So that's in my future.
God bless
so I'm just like saving up money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we have 6 between my wife and I have 6 between the two, 3 boys, 3 girls. So
God bless you, JC.
Yeah.
God bless you.
So,
Good luck. Good luck.
My kids are wonderful. I'm just, it's my life. I mean, I'm going to tell you, I know where I was, and I was as low as you could go. And I look at my life every day, and I'm so thankful and so grateful. Every day gets better.
Yeah, we're glad you're in that place now. Well, JC, thanks for coming on the show today, and thanks for sharing your story and being open and honest, and we appreciate you, and thanks for your incredible service.
We appreciate you, brother.
Well, thank you for having me.
Anyone listening to this podcast will know and understand that the Army's greatest asset is its people. And, like in any community, it's important to have constant conversations on ways that our Army can improve the quality of life for its people, enabling our soldiers and families to be as healthy and resilient as possible. On March 5th, AUSA will be hosting an all-day event as part of its Hot Topics series. Focusing on holistic health and the resilient soldier, the event will include top government, military, and industry professionals discussing research and methods to improve the Army's 5 pillars of resilience. Held at the General Gordon R. Sullivan Conference and Event Center, the function will host a number of top speakers, including the CEO of Army Emergency Relief, Sergeant Major of the Army retired Tony Grinston, Brigadier General Deidre Tahen, who is the director of the Defense Health Network, and Lieutenant General David Francis, TRADOC's Deputy Commanding General and the Commanding General of the United States Army Center for Initial Military Training. To find out more, please visit us at ausa.org.
To all our listeners, thanks for joining us. Army Matters is brought to you by the Association of the United States Army, the U.S. Army's professional association, member-supported, Army-connected. Visit us at ausa.org for more information or to become a member. Your membership helps AUSA continue to carry out its mission, educate, inform, and connect with the total Army, our industry partners, and supporters of a strong national defense. Today's episode was hosted by Lieutenant General Retired Les Smith and SMA Retired Dan Dailey, and anchor hosted by Carrie Barrow-Heckes. Anthony Del Call is the producer and writer, and Andy Bosnack is the supervising sound editor. Ellen Toner is the content editor. Unzinga Curry is the executive producer, and the senior producers are Carrie Barrow-Heckes and LaSharon Duncan. Be sure to subscribe to Army Matters wherever you get your podcasts, and please leave a review. As you know, we love seeing stars in the Army, especially if it comes in the form of a 5-star review. AUSA's Army Matters podcast can also be heard on Reach Across America Radio on Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern, on the iHeartRadio app, the Odyssey app, and the TuneIn app with the search of the word Reef. AUSA's Army Matters podcast primary purpose is to entertain. The podcast does not constitute advice or services. While guests are invited to listen, listeners, please note that you're not being provided professional advice from the podcast or the guest. The views and opinions of our guests do not necessarily reflect the views of AUSA. For questions or to provide topic recommendations, email us at podcast@ausa.org. I'm LaSharon Duncan. Hope you have a great Army Day. Hooah!